You're watching the History Fella channel. In this video we're looking at the Battle of Chancellorsville. Despite the enormous casualties suffered at Fredericksburg the previous winter, the new commander of the Army of the Potomac, Major General Fighting Joe Hooker, still commanded a formidable force of 130,000 men, now encamped at Falmouth, Virginia. By April, it successfully reorganized the unwieldy Grand Division structure to a more sensible corps formation, with an independent cavalry wing. Just as significantly, he improved the men's morale, leaving them to adopt a specific insignia for their units, improving supplies, implementing more drilling, and giving the Army of the Potomac back its spirit. He realized that to bring Lee to battle on grounds of his choosing, he must first threaten the Confederate capital, Richmond. On April 27th, 10,000 Union horses crossed the Rappahannock upstream, to then swing around Lee's rear and attack his supply lines. At the same time, another corps crossed downstream, while 3 more corps of infantry crossed the Rappahannock. They then marched, as planned, towards the hamlet of Chancellorsville to the west. The area is so named after the large brick mansion which dominated the major crossroads cutting through the dense woods. On May the 1st, Hooker had over 70,000 troops situated around Chancellorsville, awaiting what he was sure would be either a doomed Confederate frontal assault or their withdrawal. Lee had been taken by surprise, but realizing that the troops at Chancellorsville were the immediate threat, he gambled and divided his smaller force to attack a proportion of the Union Army before it had time to gather itself. He left 11,000 men above Fredericksburg to hold in place Union forces, and with Major General Stonewall Jackson's corps marched to Chancellorsville with 40,000 troops. The 3-day battle began mid-morning on May the 1st, as Hooker's columns advanced to capture a strategic crossroads, unaware that Stonewall Jackson's forces were there too. The fighting had been fairly even, yet Hooker became anxious. The realization that his enemy had not retreated from such superior forces, and instead wished to fight, had spoiled his strategy and shaken his confidence. Against the wishes of his corps commanders, he ordered Union troops back behind their original fortifications, not only giving up valuable high ground, but handing the initiative back to Lee. The Union Army was now stretched out for several miles, anchored on the left flank by the Rappahannock River to the east, with strong fortifications in the centre. Right on the farthest point, surrounded by thick woods, was the 11th Corps, led by Major General Oliver Howard. Such was Howard's belief in his natural defences that he shied away from Hooker's general order for all corps commanders to construct fortifications. It would prove his downfall. That night, Lee and Jackson sat in conference, debating an audacious idea. Lee would again divide his forces in the face of superior numbers, and have Jackson take his 2nd Corps of 28,000 men through the back roads of the wilderness, a wide area of dense shrubs and trees, to position himself at the flank of the 11th Corps, while Lee held at bay the bulk of Hooker's army facing him. Using a local guide, Jackson's men set out at 4 a.m., reaching their destination by 5 p.m. after a 12-mile march. Jackson's men hit 11 Corps like a sledgehammer, enveloping the startled Union troops as Hooker's whole line retreated before his eyes. Darkness saved a total Union collapse, as both sides halted and dug in where they stood. Jackson and his staff ventured ahead of the Confederate lines to assess if a nighttime attack could work. As they returned, rebel pickets mistook them for Union cavalry and opened fire, killing 2 and wounding Jackson himself. His corps, led by Major General J.E.B. Stuart. Lee and Stuart now needed to eliminate 3 corps, which stood between them if they were to bring both halves of the Confederate Army together to then drive the remaining Federals from the battlefield. Hooker gave up an elevated position at Hazel Grove, allowing the Confederates to take it and establish a formidable gun park, which could dominate the rest of the day's fighting. A fierce morning of assaults by Stuart's men began on May the 3rd, as they crashed into the centre of the Union positions. Unable to command and realizing if any one Union unit now broke, then his whole army was in peril, Hooker ordered a withdrawal. It was a crushing defeat. It would later be described as the perfect battle, but the cost to the South was enormous. In terms of casualties they could ill afford, and the fatal wounding of their legendary General Stonewall Jackson. If you found this video informative or helpful, please feel free to give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to the channel. Thank you very much for watching and listening to this video.